Hello, everyone. My name is Debbie Esplin, and we're going to talk about food recalls that happened in the USA and in Canada for the months of May, June, July, and August of this year. And it has been, unfortunately, a little bit of a sadly interesting time. So that's the topic of this live stream. If that interests you, then stick around and give me a like and subscribe to my channel. So I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can see what I'm talking about. Here we go. So in the US, for those 4 months, there were a total of 90 recalls. And in this particular report, I'm going to focus on recalls that are related to pathogenic bacteria. In other words, bacteria that can make you sick. So in the US, there were 17 for Listeria, 3 for Salmonella, and 1 for botulism, which is quite scary. And then in Canada, there were a total of 73 recalls for that same time period. 17 for Listeria, 8 for Salmonella, 1 for E. coli, and 2 for hepatitis. Now, Canada has 1/10 the population of the US, and yet they've only got slightly fewer recalls. That doesn't mean 100% that Canadians are worse at producing safe food, because the food landscape, the food manufacturing landscape, I should say, in Canada and in the US is very different. So Canada has mostly small food manufacturing companies spread all over the country. There are a few big Canadian chains or multinational chains that have production facilities in Canada, but the majority of food produced by Canadians is produced in small facilities. And small facilities do have a bigger challenge when it comes to preventing recalls. While the US is a different mix of large, medium, and small-sized food manufacturing plants. So it's not completely apples and oranges that we are talking about here, but I do have to say that I am disappointed that Canada has had so many recalls for May, June, July, and August. So let's take a more in-depth look at some of those recalls. So, excuse me a minute. I have a bit of a dry throat. So for Listeria, monocytogenes. In the US, there was cooked chicken produced. It may have been produced by the same company or not. I don't know that. So they may be coming from the same root cause or not, but we have 2 for cooked chicken. Smoked fish dip. Now, I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this one because down here we also have smoked fish dip. So this one was Smiling Bob's. This one was Banner Smoked Fish. So Banner Smoked Fish is where the recall started based on what I could glean from the government website. And that recall was announced on June 4th. And then on June 8th, Smiling Bob announced a recall because they used some of the smoked fish from Banner in their fish dip. Now, is that because they didn't pay attention to the recall notice when it first came out? I don't know. Or is it because they were getting food coming, they were getting the smoked fish coming in, using it right away, going out? But still, that's a 4-day. Now, it could have happened over a weekend. I didn't check that. But still, that's a 4-day period. And I know when I was a QA manager in food plants, the first thing I did when I got in was open up my email and scan for recalls because I was signed up to receive daily recalls from the Canadian government and the US government. And that was the first thing I did. Has there been a recall on an ingredient that we use or a food similar to the food we produce or a company that we buy from? And if there was, that's like, it was, my day stopped, and it was investigate the recall and see if it was touching us, see if we had to stop production, see if we had to send ingredients or food for testing. You know, it was like, that was the number one priority. So I do wonder how Smiling Bob's managed to go from June 4th to June 8th. Now, a recall is not necessarily something that you figure out in an hour. It's not like you wake up, you go to work, and it's like, oh my God, we're in a recall. No, it can be a few days of investigating and getting lab tests, and before you might actually realize, I've got to call a recall, and you have to contact the government. So the recall here that was announced on June 4th with Banner, it's possible that they started investigating 1 or 2 or 3 days before the recall was officially announced, and then Smiling Bob's could have been receiving and using the smoked fish, not having realized that a recall was potentially going to be called very soon. However, still I question the 4-day time frame, even if it was over a weekend, because one of the responsibilities of a QA manager in a food production facility is to be aware first thing every morning of every recall that comes in. And not only that, I would check my emails over the weekend. I mean, if a recall was called on a Saturday afternoon for an ingredient that I knew we would buy, like I was calling the president of the company or my boss, someone higher up, and I was going into work. Like even on vacation, I was checking every day the recall notices, because if you do find yourself in a recall, it's very serious. So I still question the 4-day time frame, but I don't have any information on what really went on. But I just wanted to share that with you as kind of information around what should be happening when recalls happen in the food industry. And if you're working like I was as a quality assurance and food safety manager in different food plants. So now here from the FDA, we've got cheddar cheese from Cahill's, chicken salad sandwich from LSG Sky Chefs, and they produce food for airplanes, kimchi from 5,000 Year Foods, muffins, cooked muffins. Now this one, I have to make some commentary on that as well. And once again, I know nothing about the recalls except for the very minimum amount of information that I get on the government websites that just announce the recalls. But muffins are cooked. They go through a heat process. If there was Listeria in one of the ingredients, it should have been killed. So that leads me to believe that the muffins were contaminated with the Listeria bacteria after they were cooked, which is a post-process contamination. And that shouldn't happen. It just shouldn't happen. And the controls should be in place to prevent it from happening. So I don't know the situation again, but I just want to say that, that's something that shouldn't happen. Leafy greens are subject to a lot of recalls for Listeria. Unfortunately, because of the process, they're high risk for Listeria contamination. I'm not saying it's right that it happens, but they are high risk. And that's one of the reasons why I rarely buy those packaged leafy greens, whether it's spinach or whether it's lettuce mix, because they are often the subject of Listeria recalls. Seasoning. Now, I wonder, because seasoning, spices and seasonings are considered, it's a known risk that they can be contaminated with salmonella because they come from a plant, they're plant material. But Listeria is possible because Listeria is also out there in the environment, but it's less common. So it's a bit odd that a seasoning would be contaminated with Listeria, especially as most seasonings and spices either go through a radiation process to kill bacteria or some kind of a heat process to kill bacteria, some kind of a process, because they are high risk for bacteria. So I just wonder about that. Salmon locks, well, that could happen. Cheese, taleggio is a cheese. Unfortunately, cheeses are high risk for Listeria. Once again, it shouldn't happen because Listeria generally, not always, but generally, if you have it in your food, it's because it's in the plant somewhere and it's not being controlled at the plant sanitation level, at the plant cleaning level. So it is something that theoretically you should be able to not have in your plant. Enoki mushrooms, and here Burrata nadi cheese, that's another Italian cheese. We're into the Canadian recalls. CFIA is means Canadian recall. Now, Irish Porter cheese from Cahill. So here you see there were 3 recalls for different kinds of cheese from Cahill's, Irish Porter cheese. And we had one earlier on from the US. So it's very possible that these Canadian recalls were because of the Cahills in the US. I don't know that. I'm just making assumptions here. Vegan grating block, that's another cheese. Now, zucchini spiral. So that would just be raw zucchini that's just been cut in a spiral and packaged. I wonder about that one because when most plant materials come from the farm or the pack house, they go into an antimicrobial wash, which should kill pathogens. And then they go through a drying process, and then whatever happens to them is going to happen, in this case, spirals. So I asked myself, what happened at the washing and the drying stage that the bacteria was not eliminated? Or was it because the Listeria was in the plant and it was contaminated afterwards? I don't know that, but those are the questions that this brings to mind. And broccoli deli products. So these were a whole bunch of different kinds of, chopped broccoli, veggie mix, all kinds of stuff. And it was in a whole bunch of grocery stores in Atlantic Canada. So was it contaminated broccoli? Was it contaminated deli area in the grocery stores? But it was a whole bunch of grocery stores. So that leads me to think it was more likely the broccoli that brought it in and not in the grocery store. Because if it was in the grocery store, it would be more likely to be just a few stores or a couple of stores, not so many. Zucchini noodles. So now, I don't know if this is related to the zucchini spirals, but once again, the zucchini should have gone through an antimicrobial treatment that would have killed any pathogens before being used. Here we have chopped salad kits and chopped salad kits. So like I said with the spinach, any kind of fresh leafy green that is in a kit or a bag, unfortunately, there's just, off and on recalls for Listeria for them. And then here we have enoki mushrooms again. So it's possible that the enoki mushrooms from these two different places came from the same source. I don't know. But that's kind of how it looks for Listeria. So what the heck is Listeria? Why am I even talking about it? Well, Listeria is a pathogen, which means it is a bacteria that can make you sick, very sick, or kill you. And in the case of Listeria, monocytogenes, it can kill elderly people, young people, people with compromised immune systems, and it can also cause problems for the fetus inside, or the babies inside of pregnant women. So, and for healthy adults, it doesn't necessarily kill you, but it can make you very sick. So it's not a bacteria you want to fool around with. You do not want to get Listeria in your system. So it is considered a serious pathogen. Salmonella is another pathogen. I'm sure you've heard of it. Salmonella is a little less likely to kill you than Listeria, but still, it can make people very ill and it can kill people. So it is also a very serious pathogen, and you don't want to fool around with it. So let's take a look at the salmonella recalls in Canada and USA over the last little while. So there was salmonella in raw chicken, frozen raw chicken. These may be related or not. However, in theory, when you cook the chicken, it should kill the salmonella, but you don't want to bring even raw chicken with salmonella into your home. And there should be controls in place to ensure that any raw chicken leaving a food plant or is not contaminated with salmonella, period. So here we have cat food. Unfortunately, cat and dog food also gets affected by salmonella and other pathogens sometimes. Tiger nuts flowers. Now, tiger nuts are a type of nuts, and nuts are known to be at risk for salmonella. But in this case, it means that the nuts were not processed in a way to remove any potential pathogens on them. And that's how the salmonella got into the flour, most likely. So once again, it's something in the process that either was missed or was not done properly, because it shouldn't happen. There should be no reason to have salmonella in flour. Tiger nut flour, anyway. So here we've got frozen cooked shrimp. This is still the US. And then we have dog food again. Organic ground coriander. So organic spices are not irradiated because organic rules forbid irradiation. Irradiation is a process for killing bacteria pathogens. So generally, they're put through a heat process, but the heat process may or may not be enough to kill bacteria. But it's very rare to see, excuse me, it's very rare to see a recall for salmonella on an organic spice, but like anything, could happen once in a while. Some more dog food. So here we are, baby spinach. So salmonella just exists out in the environment, and when you bring in vegetables from the plant, they can have spinach. They can have salmonella on them, but the spinach should have gone through a wash, antimicrobial wash that would have killed the salmonella. Then it should have gone through a drying process before it was packaged. So something went wrong, whether the wash didn't contain enough antimicrobial material, or the water, wasn't being checked enough, whatever, the concentration wasn't right, something went wrong. Seasonings, if they're not organic, seasonings should not have salmonella because they are all irradiated, and irradiation should, if it's done properly, would kill any pathogens. So I don't know what to say about that, but it just makes me wonder. Carrot products, okay, so that's like the zucchini. When carrots come in from the farm or from the pack house, they're going to go through an antimicrobial wash, and then they're going to be dried before they're processed. So if that is done properly, there should not be any bacteria that could make people sick on the carrots. So once again, I ask myself, what happened here? Salad greens, well, I've already talked about that, and it was 2 different recalls. So, there had to have been the food plant, I'm assuming, I'm making assumptions here. None of this is based on any information that I got from anywhere. It's just my knowledge of how food processing works, having worked in food plants for almost 20 years and having been a food safety compliance auditor. And so I've been in many food plants. My sense is that the plant was struggling to figure out the problem, and it took them a little bit of time to figure it out. And then sushi. Well, sushi is a high-risk product if things aren't done properly. Tempura roll. Tempura rolls are cooked, so we shouldn't have salmonella, but, can happen. And by the way, if you're here, let me stop here and take a break. If you're liking this content, give me a like and let me know. And if you have a comment, let's see, what are the comments? Okay, so we've got Ryan said hello. Hi, Ryan. Ryan has a YouTube channel, and he likes to sing, so go check out his channel. Mind-blowing. Oh, hello from Poland. Well, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for this comment. And do you know that my brother actually lives in Warsaw? I don't speak Polish, but I have been to Poland, and it's a beautiful country. So I'm really pleased to meet you, and thanks for stopping by. So let's go back and see a few more recalls. There's a few more recalls, and there's a couple more comments I want to make with you, make on the recalls. And actually, every country tracks recalls, or just about every country in the world tracks recalls. So if you live in a different country other than the USA or Canada, you can always sign up to get a list of their recalls, and they're normally also posted. If they're important recalls, they'll be posted in newspapers, they'll be posted in your grocery store, they'll be put on the radio, so that on the internet, so that people can hear about them. But most governments have an email subscribe link, so that you can sign up to have recalls in your inbox, your email inbox, if you want. And that's what I did when I was a QA manager. That's how I got the recalls coming in every day. So let's go back. Sorry, I'm in the wrong share here. Let's go back and look at some more recalls, because there's a couple more that I found rather disturbing that I want to share with you. Here we go. So now we're back into Canada. So here we have tahini and halawa. And this company, it's the same company, had 5 recalls in the space of about 5 weeks. So that tells me that they had an ongoing problem, and they had a hard time fixing it and figuring it out. I didn't research this company. I don't know anything more beyond what you see on the screen here. But I can tell you that I never worked in all the companies I worked for, I never had a recall. And in all the companies that I audited, there was just one big company that had a very small recall because of a supplier issue. But when you're a QA manager and you go into your inbox and you see a recall and you think that it might be affecting you, it's like your heart stops and you do a bit of quick research, like 3 minutes of quick research, just to kind of get a sense of, is this really something that is really could be problematic for us, or no, okay, it's the same ingredient, but it's from another part of the world and we really don't have to worry. And if you get a sense that there's a little bit of concern and you've got to research some more, then it's plant manager, production manager, president, like right away, you are going into their offices or you are calling them and you are getting everybody mobilized. Research, figure this out, and maybe production stops. So, and I know in one food plant that I worked in, we didn't have a recall, but we did have a situation where the lab called me and said, one of your ingredients is presumptive for salmonella. And I'm like, oh my God. And this was at 5:30. So I was right away, 2 seconds of research into the plant manager's office. We might have salmonella in this ingredient. And so that was it. All the finished product that had that ingredient on it went on hold right away. Everything was put on hold. Everything was quarantined, and it wasn't leaving the plants, even though we didn't even yet know if there was salmonella in there, but it was possible. So that's the way it should happen. And maybe that's what these people did. I'm not saying they didn't. I'm just wondering, because it took them quite a while to get this under control, if that was really the case. But you know what? If you live in Canada and you heard about the maple leaf E. coli recall a few years ago in sliced meat, it took them a while to get it under control, and they're a big company. So this is not necessarily an easy thing to manage. So I don't want to put out negative judgments when I don't have all the facts, but I'm just kind of sharing with you the questioning process I go through when I see this. So here we have cumin powder. Once again, cumin and all spices are a known risk for salmonella, but it's not organic. So why was it not irradiated? Or was the irradiation process faulty? Or was it contaminated afterwards? I don't know, but I do wonder. Another seasoning, same questioning going on in my head. Tofu, well, tofu is kind of like cheese, so it's possible, and it comes from a nut, so, but still it makes me wonder what went wrong. And scratchings, pork scratchings. Well, I don't know much about the process of making scratchings, so I can't say much there. But now let's go look at this. So E. coli 0157H7, which is a very serious form of E. coli, because there are E. coli that are good bacteria that we have in our gut. So not all E. coli is good, but this is the bad guy. This is the one you don't want to have in your body. Raw beef, well, it could be in raw beef. It's just that it shouldn't be getting out of the packing house if it's in the beef. Oysters, I'm assuming these are raw. Once again, it's possible. And cheese, that makes me wonder, because cheese is made from pasteurized milk. So how could there be E. coli in the milk after it's been pasteurized? That shouldn't happen. So I don't know what went wrong there, but that strikes me, this one strikes me as odd. Botulism. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of botulism. It's extremely fatal, extremely dangerous. It's actually not the bacteria that kills you. It's the toxin that the bacteria makes that kills you. It takes minute quantities of the toxin to kill you. And since it became the law for food plants to, when they would can products that were not very acidic, to go through what's called a 12D process, which basically means it's a 12-log bacteria kill, which is an extreme bacteria kill, in order to make sure that there was no botulism in the canned goods coming out of food plants. Botulism from food plants went down to almost zero, and most cases of botulism now come from home canning. However, in this case, this is a food plant, and it says they had a non-functioning temperature device. So on the big machines where they put all the cans of beans, to put them through this 12-log bacteria kill process, they had a non-functioning temperature device. Now, and there was a lot. I looked at the list of products. It was a lot of products that were, so this wasn't something that just happened for an hour and they missed it. So your 12-log process is what's called a critical control point in a food plant. And it should be checked before every run, during every run, after every run. And these checks, because they're critical control points and they're part of what's called HACCP, which is Hazard Analysis Food Safety Critical Control Point. It's a very precise, stringent process for controlling risks like botulism in food plants. I can't talk today. I have to ask myself, how could a non-functioning temperature device go through so many lots of different types of beans and not be detected? I don't know. I don't have the information, but it makes me wonder. However, it was a one-time thing, but still really bad. Not a repeat occurrence, at least not in this 4-month period. But, I have to question that one too. Now, here we've got salmonella and listeria, dog food, and hamburger buns. Hamburger buns go through a heat process. They're a cooked product. Salmonella and listeria would be killed by the cooking process. So it had to have been post-process contamination. Was it the sesame seeds that they might put on the buns? I don't know, but that one makes me kind of scratch my head as well. What happened here? Hepatitis A. This one really, really bothers me. So hepatitis A is a very serious liver disease. And what happens is that when you go to the bathroom, if you don't wash your hands properly, it comes out in your stool. So if you don't wash your hands properly, you can transmit it to food. And then people can get it from the food. And this is frozen mango, so it's not gone through a heat process. So the cause of this, it has to be an employee who didn't wash hands properly. But that's really sad because hand washing is such a huge deal in food plants. And there is so much training and so much oversight that is put on hand washing precisely to prevent stuff like this. So it just makes me feel really sad to see recalls for hepatitis A because it is so preventable with good hand washing practices and good hand washing oversight. But, we are human and we do make mistakes and we do fall down, and the same thing happens in food plants. Nobody's perfect and no food plant is perfect, and no QA manager is perfect, and no employee is perfect, no process is perfect. And that's why there are recalls, because unfortunately we are all imperfect. Here's another one. This also makes me sad. Staphylococcus aureus. Staphylococcus aureus doesn't generally kill people, but it's very unpleasant. I've actually had it. I got it from a restaurant in a hotel at a buffet. It's not fun. And once again, it's improper hand washing most of the time, or it could also be somebody, if they're breathing on the food and they have it in their respiratory system. So once again, it's pretty preventable. If you wear a mask, if you're producing high-risk food and you wear a mask or you wash your hands properly, you shouldn't be putting Staphylococcus aureus into the food. It's actually got a nickname, food handler's disease, because it's quite common in restaurants if people don't have proper hand washing controls in place. And then foreign material. I just put these two in here. There were other foreign material examples, but I just put these two in here just because, to give you an example, food plants, they are full of metal, they are full of plastic. Very often the employees wear gloves. And sometimes, unfortunately, these things get into the food. And so in this case, these were two examples. There were more, but these were two examples of foreign material getting in. And it could be a risk could cut your mouth or your tongue, could break your teeth, it could cause choking. So that's kind of the risk with foreign material. It's not something you want in your food either. It may not kill you necessarily, but it can injure you. And depending on what's going on, it could kill you as well. But it's rare. Most of the time, foreign material is more an injury problem, but not always, depending on what it is. So these were the recalls for the last 4 months. And if you have any questions, let me know. I will be happy to answer them. But I'm going to otherwise close this up soon. And if you want me to focus on specific things in my next one, which I'm going to do in the beginning of January, so I'll cover the months of September, October, November, and December, let me know. I will do spend some time looking at the allergen recalls, because a lot of the recalls that I didn't go over were for undeclared allergens. So next time we'll look at some of the pathogens, and I'll spend more time on the allergen recalls that have been going on. And if you want to know more about why you should pay attention to recalls, and if you want to look at the previous recall reports I've done, I'm going to put links to all those videos in the video description below so that you can watch them if you want to. And please do be sure to pay attention to food recalls in your area, because they do happen on a big scale, on a small scale, and they can be dangerous, and you want to avoid them. So pay attention to them. And if you do have food in your kitchen, your home, that is part of a recall, get rid of it or send it back to the manufacturer, whatever they tell you to do with it, but don't eat it. Don't take a chance. So everybody, thanks so much for watching. And if you have any comments, let me see. Oh, Strong Minds Jewelry Lovers. Hello. Nice to see you here. So does anybody have any questions that they want to ask me before I shout out and off? Well, so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I worked in food plants for 20 years, almost 20 years, responsible for food safety and quality. And now I have a YouTube channel. And on my YouTube channel, I give you tips and information around food. And I also do cooking recipes, especially fast, easy, healthy most of the time. I give you vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, and just regular recipes so that you can cook healthy food for your family and not spend hours in the kitchen. Ways to save money, ways to cut waste. So that's what my channel is all about. Check out my other recipes and other content as well. And I will put links to all of that in the video description as well. So thank you, everyone. And thank you for watching. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video, which is going to be a recipe. Bye. Have a good day.